take a look at these home videos.
I was like, of course I'll marry you.
All right, so how do you feel, Kayleen?
This seems like a loving family, right? Especially with a father who endlessly supports wife and daughter.
And my husband's great. He really is.
But over a span of 8 years, something deeply sinister was brewing in the Keller household.
I don't really feel bad about it. It's just the way it is.
And when what at first appeared to be a tragic accident rips the family apart, further investigation would later reveal the disturbing truth. On April 22, 2012, a resident in North Bend, Washington, noticed smoke coming from a neighbor's house and called police. The house was in flames, but this was no ordinary fire. As firefighters cleared the home, they discovered something unusual. 2 bodies, dead before the fire even began. Execution-style gunshot wounds to the head. These women were later identified as 41-year-old Lynette Keller and 18-year-old Kayleen Keller. And just like that, the home became a crime scene to a case that would prove to be more complex than anyone anticipated.
As the investigation went on, it just snowballed from what the heck happened to, wow, this is bigger than I think anybody thought at the start.
North Bend was a small town, a place where neighbors knew each other and murder investigations only happened in movies. In fact, many of the neighbors who gathered near the scene had known the Kellers personally. So, who were Lynette and Kayleen Keller? And why were their lives so brutally taken? Lynette was well-liked, a quiet yet friendly woman who worked hard to support her family. As for her daughter, Kayleen, well, she was a teenager just on the cusp of adulthood.
You got a new life ahead of you. No more freaking school. Well, high school.
It didn't make sense that anyone would set fire to their home, let alone murder them. As investigators moved through the charred remains of the Keller home, they searched for anything that could explain the gruesome scene. Authorities found 7 gasoline cans throughout the house, including one that was left in a skillet with the burner switched on. Yes, the fire had been set deliberately, a clear attempt to destroy evidence. But the perpetrator miscalculated, so firefighters arrived too quickly and found the evidence. Investigators found no signs of forced entry. Whoever had done this was either let in or already lived there. The execution-style deaths also suggested this was planned, and the fact that there were no immediate signs of struggle meant the victims had likely been caught off guard. Yes, whoever had done this had plotted carefully and vanished without a trace. Who was responsible for this twisted murder? Well, there was someone who was suspiciously missing from the crime scene, the family's patriarch, Peter Keller.
Hi.
Of course, there was the possibility he fled the scene in terror, but as hours ticked by with no sign of the father, one question grew stronger. What if Peter wasn't a victim? To understand what really happened on this fateful Sunday in the Keller home, we have to take a closer look at the family at the center of this case, and who they really were behind closed doors. At first glance, the Kellers seemed like an ordinary American family. Quiet, hardworking, happy. At least, that was the impression provided by their home videos.
Are you videotaping her?
Yep. Let's do a lot of videotape and then I just cut all the junk out.
However, according to Lynette, they weren't perfect.
I met him when I was in high school. And I really was like, no.
See, Lynette didn't want to get married, and while she eventually befriended and grew to adore Peter, it took persuading from both her sister and Peter himself to commit to marriage.
Then 3 months later, he started talking to me about marriage. And I was like, dude, I told you I don't want to get married. Stop pressuring me. We've only officially been together for 3 months. He actually started within a month, and I was just like, no, you gotta stop. So finally, a little over 3 months, he asked me to marry him. I was like, of course I'll marry you, and I grabbed the ring and put it on my finger. I was just so excited.
But while Lynette may have taken some convincing to marry Peter, there was no doubt she loved her husband.
And my husband's great. He really is. He's very respectful to me. He spoils me. He takes care of me.
Just like she loved their daughter.
Yeah, you got till tomorrow to get your stuff out of the house.
Oh,
so.
no. She's living with us forever. Sorry, Carson. Forever.
And their daughter loved her father.
Hey, Dad. Okay, I got this face. Because you guys won't let me take that many pictures.
Take a picture of me and sell me on eBay.
But fast forward to April 22nd, 2012, and the Kellers' facade of normalcy had shattered for good. So, how had the seemingly perfect suburban family become the subject of a homicide investigation? Authorities discovered Lynette had been battling chronic pain for years, a condition that often left her exhausted and frustrated.
I'm not doing too good today. Sorry, I'm just in a lot of pain.
Yet despite the medical appointments and medications, Lynette kept her pain hidden from many. Her husband Peter was one of the few people who knew what she was going through, and according to Lynette, he did his best to make sure she was comfortable.
My husband, a few months ago, went out and bought me this big recliner for my back, and I'm just now starting to use it. He's so happy.
And to be there for her.
He's here, he's supporting me, he takes care of me. Even though I can't go back to work and I'm home in pain all the time, he gave me my scrapbooking room with my dream come true.
So, as Lynette tried to make a career out of her hobby...
Hi everyone. My little puppy's looking outside. Okay, I got a lot of stuff to show you guys that I'm going to put in my store. I'm so excited. This is bag 2. And I had so much fun making these too. You guys got a lot of products in here.
Peter became her emotional and financial support, and she was beyond grateful.
He's a great guy. He stuck around with me. I'm, some guys are kind of leave when you get that, it's part of your vows. But anyways, I don't want to get on to that.
Kayleen, on the other hand, had just graduated from high school.
All right, so how do you feel, Kayleen?
No more high school, yay!
College was next, and it came with a heavy financial strain. Still, there was no indication that things were on the verge of unraveling in the Keller household. No arguments, no tension, no visible signs of distress. The Kellers were still that typical American family, until that Sunday morning. No one knew what had happened in the hours leading up to the fire, or what had triggered the violence. What authorities did know was this: 3 people lived in the Keller home. 2 had been killed, and Peter Keller was nowhere to be found. Naturally, this made Peter Keller a person of interest in the double homicide. And soon enough, suspicions evolved into solid evidence. See, in the days following the discovery of the bodies, investigators began combing through financial records, looking for anything that could help explain the motive behind the murders. What they uncovered shocked everyone. It was revealed that Peter Keller emptied his bank accounts shortly before the murders, and the withdrawals were large and frequent, begging the question, what was Peter saving up for? Authorities didn't have to wonder for long. A search of Peter's hard drive provided the answer they were looking for. Investigators uncovered hundreds of video diaries recorded over several months, possibly even longer. Entries that reveal a dark portrait of a man who was preparing to carry out the unimaginable.
I used to sit here and think, this whole thing is just crazy. I don't even question it anymore. It just seems like everything makes so much sense now. Just the more I've thought about it, the more I understand it. I don't really feel bad about it. It's just the way it is. Certain things happen that cause this to happen.
Wait, let's rewind that.
I don't really feel bad about it. It's just the way it is.
Yes, Peter had no remorse for what he was about to do.
Just kind of accepted it and just rolling with it.
But according to Peter, that didn't make it easy. With chilling calmness, he said,
Part of me has a hard time even imagining doing what I'm going to do. But as I think about it, I always come up to the same conclusion every time. I'm starting to get more okay with it. Other times I feel like I'm more than ready. I've tried to make it in this world and it just isn't happening. I'm 40 now and I am running out of time.
It didn't take a genius to piece this all together. Peter Keller had killed his wife and daughter in cold blood. But what made the perfect father and husband snap? Underneath the persona the Kellers presented to the world, Peter kept his real feelings hidden. So, while Lynette saw her husband as a happy provider,
he got me all that furniture, and then he put my shelves up for me. Such a great husband.
who supported her through her illness,
He's one of those guys who does stay through sickness.
secretly, Peter resented his wife.
I just feel like I'm getting knocked back every time financially. My wife is just gonna suck all the money out that I have.
And the life they built together.
I'm getting to the point where just trying to live and pay bills and live as a civilian and go to work, it just freaks me out.
Feelings Lynette was seemingly never aware of.
That's my story of my husband, who is, who is my husband, who's the love of my life.
But while these videos provided unsettling insight into Peter's feelings, one question still loomed over the case. Where was Peter Keller?
Well, it's about 2 weeks before we finally drop out of society and fully commit to this. This is probably going to be my last video till after that.
To answer this question, we must go to the Cascade Mountains, a mountain range that spans from Washington through to Oregon, Northern California, and British Columbia. In over 500 miles of terrain covered by giant trees, it's easy to get lost, and even easier to hide. It was here, in the deep woods, that Peter Keller had built something entirely off the grid, a hidden bunker in a remote location known only to him. This was Camp Keller. For 8 years, Peter had secretly worked on constructing this underground retreat.
All right, I'm getting ready to move one of these big beams in. This thing is pretty heavy. It's soaked with water, which makes them very heavy, makes it a real...
See, Peter was a survivalist, also known as a prepper, a person who prepares for a natural disaster or even the end of the world. And the Cascade Mountains presented an ideal location to isolate from society. The remoteness of the area meant Peter could work in peace, hidden away from the eyes of neighbors, family, and even the authorities. And soon enough, what began as an escape turned into something far more disturbing. For years, Peter had been collecting materials, hauling them into the wilderness to build his own private sanctuary.
I usually come up with between a 30 and 40 pound pack every time I bring a load of something up.
And further detach from society.
It's actually more comfortable for me to think about living out here, robbing banks, pharmacies, just taking what I want for as long as I can. At least it'll be exciting. It won't be boring.
Yes, Peter was drawn to the idea of self-reliance and preparing for an uncertain future.
This is kind of an outside look. My wood pile on this side.
However, what he had in mind for Camp Keller was much darker than a simple survivalist getaway.
We haven't done the part that I'm not looking forward to.
From his video diaries, it was clear Peter was wrestling with the weight of what he was about to do.
How did I get so...
And even second-guessing his decision.
You know, I often wonder if what I'm doing is the right thing. And I think it is.
Still, Peter continued trying to convince himself to go through with the horrific plan, even if he couldn't speak what he was going to do out loud.
At this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I may get caught right away. It's all up to chance at this point. So I don't think anyone knows where I'm at. But if they put it together, who knows? At this point, I have to take that chance.
Yes, Peter saw murder as his only option, and he was aware of just how twisted that was.
You know, as I do this for hour on hour, it's like I just sit there and think about stuff. Think about, like, how did I get so f***ed up? How did so many things go wrong?
Peter, however, had his excuses, mainly that he wasn't satisfied with his life.
Yeah, basically last year has been really tough on me.
been coming to terms, realizing just how pathetic I am. And there's just no hope. But it was tough. Wasn't interested in anything anymore. Couldn't motivate myself.
Yet rather than simply file for divorce or leave, Peter chose the most violent method of wiping his slate clean: murder. So, what happened in the early hours of Sunday, April 22nd, 2012, at the Keller home? According to investigators, Peter was brutal and deliberate, shooting his wife and daughter in their heads like a trained assassin, using a firearm equipped with a silencer. But Peter didn't stop with Lynette and Kayleen. He also murdered the family pet, Dino.
I want to first show you, look at Dino. He just got a haircut a couple days ago. My husband was like, he's looking too scruffy.
Yes, the dog that had been with the family for years and even accompanied Peter on trips to the bunker had also ended up being expendable.
He was afraid that the dog would give him away in the bunker, and so he killed the dog too.
Clearly, this wasn't about Lynette or Kayleen or the financial strain anymore. This was about removing anything that could anchor Peter to his former life. With gasoline and explosives, he burnt everything he had known to the ground. Or at least that was Peter's intention. He hadn't planned on the evidence and the hard drives surviving the fire. Yes, investigators now not only knew that Peter Keller was guilty, but that he was hiding somewhere in a bunker in the Cascade Mountains. So, what awaited Peter after these heinous crimes? Well, according to criminal defense lawyer Bruce Rivers, Peter's videos leading up to the crime were essentially a confession to first-degree murder.
This is the ultimate self-snitching video. He wants the chase. He wants to see how long he can last.
See, an act must be both deliberate and premeditated to be considered first-degree murder. Peter's crime fits this definition perfectly. After all, he not only plotted to murder his wife and daughter, but he also prepared for it financially.
The other thing, they can go back and, obviously look through his financial history and just show the level of effort that he put into this thing.
According to Bruce, given Peter Keller's clear intent and lack of remorse, the penalty for his actions would likely be life in prison without the possibility of parole. Authorities just had to find him first. But how could law enforcement spot a tiny bunker hidden somewhere in 500 miles of thick evergreens? Disguising themselves as harmless hikers, officers began exploring the area. And while Peter's ability to survive in the wild made him a difficult target, investigators had a lead. See, they had photos that Peter had taken on the mountainside while constructing the bunker. And according to retired Sergeant Cindy West, who worked on the case, something in one of those images stuck out.
It looked like a power line in the distance. So you're looking off the mountain toward, which would be North Bend, the city. You can barely see this power line and something else. Again, I didn't think it was a power line. But our detective Mike Mellis says, I think that's a power line. I think that down there is probably the city.
Helicopters began combing the area, and 6 days after the murder, they spotted something. There in the forest near Rattlesnake Ridge was a wisp of smoke rising from the trees. Peter had lit a fire in his bunker's chimney, the same one he showed off in his video diaries.
That's my fireplace, wood stove, whatever.
This breakthrough marked the final battle between Peter and the outside world. But who would come out victorious? From the footage and photos they found on the Keller's hard drive, law enforcement knew Peter's bunker was full of firearms and ammunition. They'd have to be careful. The officers began with a well-known tactic: tear gas. The hope was to disorient Peter and force him to surrender.
Yeah, it's dissipating finally. The first one you sent in is dissipating. You want me to throw a 98 under the window, the open window where we first gassed?
The team, however, quickly realized that these tactics wouldn't work. Peter's knowledge of the terrain and his bunker's design, which according to his videos included multiple levels.
Now we're going upstairs.
Meant he was prepared for any attack. To drive Keller out, the police tried another method.
Isn't going to work. We may have the command post try and locate like a wildlands fire pump and hose that can pump a large volume of water into this place.
But that didn't work either. With no other choice, the authorities moved to more aggressive tactics, the use of grenades. The explosion rattled the area and eventually broke through the roof of the bunker. The area was surrounded, the situation was critical, and the police knew they needed to act quickly before Peter could make any dangerous moves. Surrounding the bunker, officers called out for the survivalists to surrender. A single pop, heard from within the bunker, would change everything. Cindy West recalled the pivotal moment.
So they didn't know, did he have an accidental discharge? Was it something else? They didn't know.
After the gunshot, SWAT teams quickly breached the bunker. Inside, they found Peter Keller dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was exactly the ending the survivalist had foreshadowed in his video diaries.
At this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I may get caught right away. Basically, if I get caught, I'm just going to shoot myself.
And since the man who had spent years preparing to survive had chosen death instead of facing the consequences of his actions, the public was left to speculate over one question. Why had Peter Keller killed his family? Retired Sergeant Cindy West couldn't make sense of the murder.
Based on the conversations that we had with friends of both of them, it sounded like he was a loving, great husband. So I think they were both blindsided by it. And, I don't know.
Yes, it was difficult for the public to understand Peter's motive. But online people have theorized that Peter's secretive attitude, his obsession with isolation, and his increasing detachment from society set him apart from the prepper community and instead hinted at mental health struggles. On top of this, he was also seemingly suffering from delusions as detectives discovered that Peter had written on his designs of the bunker that he had planned to build laboratories for viruses and nanobots, while others believed he was selfish, entitled, and lacking empathy, murdering simply because he valued his freedom over their lives. But now, how would the community of North Bend heal from the dark stain Peter left in his wake? Well, following the investigation, the Department of Natural Resources destroyed Camp Keller. As for Lynette and Kayleen, their memories were honored by donating the cash Peter secretly hoarded in his bunker to a memorial scholarship established in their honor. This has been the story of Peter Keller, the man who spent years preparing for survival, only to die days after his mission began.